If I had any recommendation to make to Sri Lanka on this score, I would go back to development banking. You see, this is one of the worst things that was ever done in Sri Lanka, the privatization of the NDB and the DFCC. And the reason is all these countries, all the successful countries I mentioned, had one policy, and one policy only. That was the absolute bedrock of everything they did, and that was development banking, state development banking. And one of the important things about state development banking, it allows companies to acquire the advanced technology. I'll just give an example of China. You see, what China did, let's say, in terms of night vision technology, this is one of the most advanced technologies in the world. And you wouldn't automatically identify it with a low labor cost environment like China. But what the Chinese did was they said, no, we are not interested in only low value-added manufacturing. We want to go after the higher value-added manufacturing as well. Key to that is the development bank. So the Bank of China, I know this as a first-hand case study because one of my students actually was involved in the company that was developing night vision technology. What he told me is they got a massive loan from the Bank of China. And their job was to acquire the foreign technology and the expertise to develop this night vision technology, which is a very advanced technology. And this is where the development bank was so vital, because they gave this company the money to develop it in a way that they wanted them to corner the market in night vision technology. Within 20 years, this company had become number 2 in the world. Number 2. Okay, you wouldn't naturally associate a low wage cost environment with the acquisition of this very advanced technology. But the point about China is they're not interested in just having low wage or low remunerative tasks. What they want is a holistic approach. And this is why development banking is so important. I'm sorry to say this, but I have actually been involved in this whole discussion about NDB and DFCC being privatized. And at the time, the IMF representative, it's many years now, so I can say this openly, he told me it is a war of ideas, Howard. We need the privatization of the development banks. We cannot allow any more East Asian success stories. Look at it, Singapore, Korea, Japan. Professor Laxman, you know Japan. I mean, look at it. It's built on state development banks. You can't name any Japanese company, not one Japanese company today, that didn't start life with a loan from a state development bank. When China wanted to join the WTO, you know what the #1 demand of the US and Europe was? You know? You can guess it. Privatization of the Bank of China. Why? Because this bank was underwriting all the advanced technology companies in China. The companies that eventually became threats to the West. The low-wage cost companies were not that important. It's the companies that were using the same technology as in the West. So, in answer to you, what I think is, indeed, it's possible that some industries relocate, but it's not inevitable and it's not necessary. We just have to have the right tools. If I had my way, I would actually set up development banking, again in Sri Lanka. But I know the West will be bitterly opposed to it. I know that because I was involved in a scrap with the Western institutions 16 years ago. And I know some of the confidential reports which were passing between the Sri Lankan government and the IMF and the World Bank. The thing they feared was state development banking, because that is the core. That's the core. Once you get state development banks, then you're in a totally different ballgame. You see, remember when they came in after the assassination of President Premadasa, the first thing the IMF asked for was privatization of DFCC and NDB. DFCC and NDB were the two most efficient banks in Sri Lanka. Why did they want them privatized? And after they finished with the privatization, did they go after Bank of Ceylon? No, they didn't. Did they go after any of the other banks? No, they didn't. They didn't go after the People's Bank. They were obvious candidates. Why did they go after DFCC and NDB? You now know. And this was actually in reports. I had discussions with World Bank people very directly. And they said, Howard, it's a war. It's an economic war. I don't blame the foreigners. I don't blame the Western countries. This is an economic war. Who do I blame? I say our people. If you forgive me for saying that, I blame our people. I don't blame foreigners. This is their job to block you. The question is, what are we doing about it? This is what is important.
Thank you very much, Professor Howard Nicholas.